Over the decades, Star Wars Legends has shown us some truly weird stuff. And we're not talking about the resurrection of Palpatine or sketchy plot elements like that. Nah, we mean weird. In a thoroughly unsurprising turn of events, the weirdest of the weird Legends material came out of the 1980s, including the character we'll be discussing today. This character was the Sun King, and he was a literal god who lived on the forest moon of Endor, ruled over the summer, spoke like a surfer dude, and was, by all appearances, permanently stoned.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The forest moon of Endor was home to a slew of weird stuff, among them giants that ate Ewoks for breakfast, a rogue witch who led a band of lizard pirates, sentient flower people called the Dandelion Warriors, and, we sith you not, a crying mountain. Many of the moon's oddities, like the witch and the lizard pirates, were castaways that crashed on the forest moon after navigational disagreements with one of the many pulsars and black holes near the Endor system. Some, like the giants and the flower people, were just natives of the planet that happened to be a little off. But then there's the mystical stuff that doesn't fully make sense in universe, like Mount Sorrow or the pantheon of Ewok gods to which the Sun King belonged. In universe, there are a few half explanations for these phenomena, which help rationalize but don't fully explain them. There were a number of mystical artifacts that ended up on the forest moon that might have explained the existence of its oddities. Among these were the Sunstar, a rock imbued with tremendous amounts of force power owned by the Ewoks of Bright Tree Village, and the Seasoned Scepter, which we'll be discussing later. Of course, the real reason the forest moon of Endor is so weird is because all the oddities come from 80s era expanded universe material released in the years after Return of the Jedi. A lot of post-Return of the Jedi material focused on the Ewoks because of their appeal to kids, and because Ewok-related material was geared toward kids, continuity and cohesion with the rest of the Star Wars universe wasn't something the creators really paid attention to. Two great examples of this Ewok content were a comic series and a cartoon that somehow got 2 full seasons, both of which were simply titled Ewoks. The Sun King comes from the Ewoks cartoon, specifically Season 2, Episode 8. The whole cartoon is like a fever dream, and it's probably a blast to watch after a few drinks, because the stuff we'll be talking about today is just the tip of the iceberg for this acid trip of a show. If you're interested in experiencing that sort of thing, Ewoks is on Disney Plus as part of the Star Wars Vintage Collection, though if you're gonna watch an 80s era Star Wars cartoon, you should probably watch Droids instead. It's honestly pretty underrated. Anyway, let's talk about the Sun King. On normal planets, seasons happen because of changes of a planet's tilt and proximity to the sun as part of its normal orbital cycle. On the forest moon of Endor, however, the seasons were apparently controlled by a force-imbued artifact called the Seasoned Scepter. This scepter controlled the weather and temperature of the whole moon and could also spur growth or decay of plant life. At some point in the forest moon's history, the scepter was found by 4 siblings who laid claim to it and became gods. These were the Leaf Queen, the Snow King, the Flower Queen, and the Sun King. In case you couldn't tell from their names, each of the 4 siblings ruled over a season, passing the scepter to the next sibling with each change of season. The Sun King was the god of summer. He ruled from a palace located on a beach close to the Bright Tree Village, the Ewok village from Return of the Jedi. His palace was small and simple, but it was nice enough and featured a large pool. There, the Sun King lived with his courtiers, whom he referred to as the Dudes. Unlike his sisters, who actually had an idea of how to be decent gods, the Sun King spent his 3 months in charge of the forest moon, neglecting even the semblance of responsibility, enlisting the Leaf Queen and Flower Queen to help whenever something went wrong. Instead of doing whatever a seasonal god is supposed to do, the Sun King spent his days just vibing on the beach with his dudes, which is a real mood, or it would be if it didn't mean coming into contact with sand. To complete the picture of what the Sun King was like, we're going to pull a quote from his Wikipedia article. The Sun King was also inexperienced in the way of childcare, as he sent several children into potential combat zones. Aside from the details of that particular incident, which we'll get to shortly, we don't know all that much about the Sun King. The forest moon of Endor simply had seasoned gods apparently, and the legend's continuity appears to have just accepted that and moved on. Sometime during the Imperial era, problems arose for the seasoned gods when the Snow King was seduced by Audra, the Duchess of Sleet, who froze his heart to make him cruel and turned him against his siblings. On Odra's bidding, the Snow King made a bid for supremacy over the Forest Moon one summer, cutting ties with all his siblings. He and Odra sent out a group of his Icehead minions, who could travel by skating on their heads, to steal the Season Scepter from the Sun King's palace. When the Iceheads came for the scepter, the Sun King wasn't paying attention and pretty much let them walk out with the powerful artifact. With the stolen scepter, the Snow King plunged the Forest Moon into perpetual winter, much to the Sun King's alarm. In his own semi-incoherent words, okay, like, there I was just hanging out with some of the dudes. We're just sitting there just digging the sunshine, like how great it was to be out there baking, you know? When, like, all of a sudden, ZINGO, instant deep freeze. The Iceheads were, like, gone. History. And it's been snowing ever since. In the face of this terrible situation, the Sun King did what he usually did when something went wrong. He asked his sisters to solve the problem for him. The Leaf Queen and the Flower Queen took up residence in his palace, and at length they decided to call Logray, the shaman of Bright Tree Village, for assistance. However, Logray wasn't around at the time, and a bunch of Ewok children answered the call instead: Wicket, Latara, Tibo, and Princess Knisa. On the way to the Sun King's palace, Princess Knisa was captured by the Iceheads and taken to the Snow King's palace. The other Ewoks consulted with the Sun King and his sisters, who decided to, as the article so brilliantly put it, send the children into a potential combat zone. Wicket and his two friends led an assault on the Snow King's palace, and despite being up against a literal winter god, they somehow came out on top. Odra was defeated and the Snow King's heart was thawed, allowing him to repent. After this, the Sun King took back the Season Scepter, and summer resumed on the Forest Moon. As it turned out, the Ewoks not only saved the season of summer, but also their whole village, as the next stage of Odra's plan had been to freeze Bright Tree Village and steal the Sunstone. Wicket and his friends were hailed as heroes by the village leaders and their gods alike, and the Sun King presumably went back to vibing on the beach for the remainder of the summer, having done literally nothing of significance and still ending up on top. If you're interested in the full story of the Sun King and the Season Scepter, be sure to check out their episode, appropriately titled The Season Scepter, on Disney+. But what do you think? Do you want us to tell more weird Star Wars stories like this? Free to post your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.